wait while we try to reconnect you. Um, so it looks like it looks like uh, somebody at YouTube really does not like this particular um, topic. So um, successfully connected, and we're back. Um, Let me just note that here. Uh, the chat was briefly disconnected and is back now. Like I said, it would appear that this is a topic that apparently YouTube would rather no one discussed, which is a little bit strange considering that everybody is going to be paying attention to the U.S. presidential campaign. So anyhow, again, if you're watching this unauthorized, you're wondering, well, what are the issues? So anyhow, now you know. We continue on. You know, there's no need to be whining about it. There's no need to be complaining about it, etc., etc. So, anyhow, again, I think that it's too soon to assume that Elizabeth Warren is going to be the candidate. Kamala Harris is obviously one of the more serious candidates. I don't think Tulsi, whatever her name is, Gabbard, is a serious candidate. I don't think she can get the donors. I don't think that she can get the institutional support. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen. There's absolutely no point in talking about somebody like Andrew Yang. You know, he's a stunt candidate, totally unimportant. I don't believe that Hillary will be permitted to throw her hat back in the ring. I also think that it is absolutely ridiculous to imagine that Michelle Obama is going to get drafted. One thing that you need to keep in mind about Michelle Obama is that she is a very, very unlikable individual. She is not popular. She's not somebody that people get along with easily, like Obama. And so I don't think that it matters, to be honest, who is going to run against Trump, because Trump is going to win in a landslide, in my opinion, which I have said from the beginning. And I have seen absolutely nothing to change my perspective on it. If Bernie, it will be interesting to see if Kamala fails to spark any significant public enthusiasm. If she can't even win over the black vote against an old white woman like Elizabeth Warren, I think that you're going to see her support fade very, very quickly. And so, it would be very interesting. I think that Bernie Sanders would actually be one of the more serious candidates, if not the most serious candidate. Yes, he's a lunatic socialist, but you know what? Lunatic socialism is no longer beyond the pale. Lunatic socialism is what a significant portion of the American electorate, especially the paper American electorate, supports. And so, remember, it's not about, see, this is where, this is possible, but again, you're leaping to conclusions too soon. Day says Warren will be the nominee. She draws the crowds and the money. She does right now, but that doesn't mean that she's going to once the crowds thin or once the campaigns thin a bit. Once the candidates start dropping out, then the equations get different. Right now she has the advantage of being recognizable. She has the advantage of being coherent, and she has the advantage of not being Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, both of whom just reek of corruption. I'm not saying that Warren isn't corrupt. Certainly we know she's dishonest, but she doesn't radiate the stench of corruption like Harris and Biden do. And so, but Trump has already effectively taken her out with the whole Pocahontas thing. She's not going to be able to stand up to Trump anywhere nearly as well as Hillary did. And Hillary didn't particularly stand up well to him either. Oh, Amy Klobuchar is a total non-entity, total no-hoper, totally irrelevant. So, Rocky Mountain Bear says Warren is too stupid to be as corrupt as the others. I don't think so. I mean, I just think that she is one of those well-intentioned white women that shakes her finger at everyone. I think that's why she is less dislikable than some of the others. It's hard to actively dislike Elizabeth Warren, even when you think that she's just totally irrelevant. Jaga says, is Yang corrupt in any way? It doesn't matter. I'm more likely to be elected president of the United States than Andrew Yang. Women will not even date Asian men for the most part. They're not going to vote for him. There's not a chance. And if you're interested in Andrew Yang's ideas because he's going to give you money, I assure you Bernie Sanders will offer pretty much everybody considerably more money than anybody else. And so, when you see all these meme artists doing the whole Yang gang thing, those are the same people that were doing Trump memes. You know why they're doing it? Not because they want Andrew Yang to win. They're doing it because they see him as being a wrecking ball in the Democratic primary. Mig G says Yang is too ugly for women. Not only that, he's way too short. I have not announced my candidacy. I will not run, and if elected, I will not serve. So I'm simply saying that despite the fact that I totally refuse to run for any electoral office, especially in the United States, I still have a better chance of getting elected president than Andrew Yang. Luis Nunez says, women who shake their finger at everybody are the definition of dislikable. It all depends on how they do it. I mean, sometimes nobody objects to the mother who sees the neighborhood boys doing something dangerous and goes out and tells them to knock it off. That's how Elizabeth Warren tends to come off. So, Fox won't serve as president, but he didn't say he wouldn't serve as king. I don't want to be king either. about the only thing that I would be willing to do would be to be a dictator in the Roman fashion, which is where you go in, you clean things up for a year or two, and then you go back to your farm. That's about the only type of national leadership that I would ever be interested in any way, shape, or form. If you look at Donald Trump, he has spent his entire first term so far battling the people that are supposed to be working for him and with him. And so that just seems like a horrible way to spend your days. And I was thinking about this too. You know, you look at the people who have sold their souls for power. You look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden is, probably on the third tier of power. So he's way up there. And how many of you would trade places with him? You know, his son died a terrible death. He's babbling nonsensically in public and so forth. Is it worth it? Was it worth it? I mean, that's something that I would have been interested to talk to David Koch, or David Koch, I don't know how you pronounce that. I would have been interested to talk to him and just say, you had this amazing wealth. You had all kinds of opportunities. It would appear that you sold at least a portion of your soul in order to amass this kind of wealth and influence and so forth. Was it worth it? As you get older, you realize how little time you have left. 20 years sounds like a lot. But, in less than 20 years, I'll be 70. I'll have reached my 70. Did I spend most of my time well? Some of it. But a lot of it just, was just not terribly well spent. Maybe it worked out, in terms of the family and the books and so forth. Although I haven't really written the kind of books that that really appeal to my ambition. I don't think that I've reached my peak yet as a writer. But I think that you have to think about these things because you're thinking, okay, when you're going to, if you've got 30 years left, how are you going to, how are you going to use it? What are you going to do? I don't look 25. I appreciate that, but let's be realistic here. I am in excellent physical condition. I had my annual physical, and the doctor always talks about how like my numbers are like elite athlete level and so forth. But that was before I went and put the additional effort into to get back to my to get back to the weight I was when I was I think 25, 26. And now he said, you're in the best physical condition of anybody that I see at your age. Keywords at your age. No matter how good a shape you were in at 50, at 60, it's not the same. I mean, trust me. you know, it takes me 2 days to fully recover from a soccer game or a soccer practice. It's just crazy. Marcia Jones says, they just say that to make you feel good. Not our doctors. European doctors, I think by American standards, they would probably be considered very mean. They don't do the telling you things to make you feel better at all. Let me give you an example. Back when I think I was 40, and I went to this doctor, and he had a poor bedside manner, if you want to call it that, even for a European doctor. And it was so funny because he comes in and he says, on like, I just don't want to make an ass of myself, right? So I'm just like, oh, yes, I thought so. I was going over some of the x-rays, and you have some scarring on one of your lungs. I said, from childhood? He said, yes. I said, and this is the bad news. He said, yes. I said, the really bad news. He said, yes, there's scarring on one of your lungs. And I said, and I've had this since I was a child. He says, yes. I said, well, what negative consequences does this have? Well, nothing really. It's just, there's the visible scarring. I said, I was a NCAA Division I sprinter with this scarring on my lung. So clearly it doesn't matter. And he's like, well, I guess that's one way of looking at it. And I'm thinking, my goodness, what do you tell somebody who actually has something that's wrong with them? My lungs are fine. They work fine. But it's just so crazy. Anyhow, we didn't keep going to that doctor for long. So anyhow, what is the point in that? Your time's going to run out, eventually. So sleep, and plus we played a soccer game today, so I'm pretty beat. But anyhow, let's do some super chats, and then I want to talk about Owen's tour, his upcoming tour. Let's see. From yesterday, extra support for the daily streams from Garen. Thanks, Vox and Unauthorized. Thank you. Hello, Kitty. Brazil Bear said, if I loved A Throne of Bones, would I like Wheel of Time? Almost certainly not. Lionshare Logo said, Oman's Red Books. He's talking about the history of the Peninsular War. Reading First of the Seven, style is very enjoyable. Yeah, he's a great historian. Most supernatural encounter experience. I don't talk about that stuff. How do you detect when God is speaking to you? I think it's when your conscience convicts you and you really, really don't want to do it. I think there's a danger in assuming that God's telling me to do this thing that I really want to do. And especially if it's in violation of God's word. If you feel convicted to do or say something that is in accordance with God's word, and you really don't want to do it, you absolutely don't want to do it, I think that's when you can safely assume that God is communicating with you in some capacity. Marie Golay does the woman thing. In 10 years, I will look exactly like Warren. I have vested interest in her not saying anything to harm future me. Okay. Ganji Blob Flankus says, the pause has managed to rouse the boomers. You wouldn't have thought it possible, but there we go. Enid Blyton, commemorative coins canceled for varied isms. Real reason? She wrote wholesome stories. Maybe, but I think that you're underestimating the importance of maintaining the narrative. A lot of people who were liberal left-wing icons are going to be deplatformed. They're already going after Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, etc. People that even the left used to lionize because they violate the current narrative. The narrative must remain uber alles. So I think you're looking at it a little too rationally there. Gummer Bear said, do you think Roosh will ever be the same after spending a couple days with Big Bear? Well, I think that he's already transformed. I think that his major transformation has already taken place. Big Bear is, I think, just opening his eyes to new possibilities. So I mean, Roosh is a fascinating guy. He's a fascinating character. I like him. I've always thought well of him, but I've always thought he was a intelligent truth seeker. And it doesn't surprise me to see that he's been moving in a interesting direction. And I think that his future path may well prove to continue to be interesting. Cave Bear said, sadly heard Shapiro on the car radio tallying up votes Trump got in 2016 but won't get next year. Shapiro wouldn't know, so what does it matter? What is his plan? Is he smart enough to know? Well, his plan is never Trump, which it has been since the beginning. Is he smart enough to know? No. I do not trust Shapiro or Shabbat Lubavitch. I feel alarm. Why would you feel alarm? These guys were wrong the last time. They'll be wrong this time too, most likely. So I wouldn't feel alarm. Be confident. What is your opinion on Dante's Inferno? I think it's one of the great artistic accomplishments of man. I've read it twice, entirely in English, and I've read it partway through in Italian. What's your opinion on Milton's Paradise Lost? I think it's very influential as literature, but it's much more influential than it is interesting or entertaining. Cave Bear says, I have pneumonia scars from age 3, so what? You're in awesome shape. Keep kicking butts until there aren't any left to kick. Yeah, I was talking to a guy that I play soccer against, former professional, played at the absolute top levels, the Champions League and that kind of stuff. And when we were 45, we were talking, and I'd had a particularly good game. I mean, he's the best player on the field, but I had a particularly good game and scored 2 goals, and we beat them. I think it was 3. Neither one of us was as significant. Most of their attacks still go through you. You have to believe that you can do these things. There's a lot of things that I've done that um, I either regret doing or I think were a waste. But I don't regret a single moment that I've spent on the field. You know, because for me it's just pure, unadulterated joy. You know, whether we're winning, whether we're losing, whatever. I just, you know, it's the one time I don't think about anything else, and so it's very freeing in that way. Um, I don't know what your hobbies are. I don't know what your interests are. But if you have something that gives you that kind of freedom from the stresses and the pressures and the ups and downs of the world, I encourage you to always make sure that you carve out some time for it, whatever it is. You know, I think it will have a positive effect on you. What is your opinion on the Summa Theologica? An even more significant contribution to human history. Uh, you know, I've written I tried to write an entire novel in the Aquinan structure. It was a bit of a failure in that regard, although it was a pretty good novel apparently. Um, but you know, I like the Summa a lot. I read it. Um, I mean, not the whole thing. You know, it's not really designed to be read that way, but I read it regularly. I like to go through it and, um, you know, just read two or three of the questions and contemplate whether I agree with the Aquinan logic or not. Um, you know, one of my ambitions would be to write a Summa Economica. Uh, if if I find that I disagree with Steve Keen's magnum opus, which he's writing right now. Heat 8910 says, "What are your thoughts on Hans Hermann Hoppe?" Uh, I don't think much about him. I mean, I know he's very big in the libertarian world, but as I've increasingly moved away from that, um, you know, I'm familiar with the God that failed, democracy, the God that failed, and all that sort of thing. You know, he did see some of those flaws, I think, earlier than others, um, but I don't have a whole lot of patience for libertarian thought anymore. It's just it's romantic, and it's about as realistic as the communists. Thank you for sharing your intellect and your thoughts. Your commitment to truth has been an inspiration. Well, I'm glad about that because I think that the single most valuable thing that you can learn from me or anyone else is how important it is to tell the truth and how many people that you believe to be authorities are deceivers. It's astonishing how many people you want to believe are good people, that you genuinely believe are good people, and just simply are not. They're professionally focused on leading you astray. Can you design a Summa video game? I don't think that would be possible. Let's see. Cave Bear says, "Thank you for your words on Shapiru. You are correct. He is irrelevant. Listening to you speak is a great encouragement. It always is." Well, I'm glad because the most important thing for all of us is that we maintain a high level of morale. You know, come what may, keep your morale up. You know, and when you are feeling down for whatever, don't drag others down. Allow yourself to be picked up. You know, when I was in college, we used to have these horrible workouts called speed day. It was brutal. And we would have to, after warming up, we would have to do 200-meter sprints, not full speed, but like we'd have to run them in between 27 and 30 seconds, depending on what the coach wanted. So you do a fast 200, you walk 100 meters, you jog 100 meters, and then you do it again. I usually started throwing up sometime between the fifth one and the eighth one. By the time we would do 12, everybody would. All the guys would. But the thing is that, and everybody would collapse at some point in time. Not during the sprinting, but, during the walking part usually. Occasionally during the jogging. And the thing is that one lap, you would be the one to go down, and you'd immediately feel 2 or 3 pairs of hands pulling you up to your feet. And then the next lap, somebody else would be down, and then it was your turn to pull them up. But the key thing is, no matter who went down, everybody kept moving forward together. And I think that that's something that that's a concept that we should adopt and apply. PF Dynamite throws up a bear sign. Any chance you and Saint Ifan will do another one of those literature critical analysis things like you did with Crime and Punishment? I don't know. Stefan's very busy with what he's doing, and I'm not really spending much time doing interviews or talking with other people in public. So, we may get around to it at some point or not. Are you in favor of Scottish independence? Absolutely. I am an omni-nationalist. I favor all nationalisms. The Scottish people have a right to govern themselves. And in fact, the smartest thing in the world would be for the Tories, the English Tories, to let them go. It's not worth it. Having imperial rule over Scotland significantly negatively impacts the way the English govern themselves, which is a basic rule of imperialism, if you think about it. Let's see. Nathaniel Manda says, not only vomit but cramping. Yeah, no, that was when I ran the 300 in an indoor match or an indoor meet. I won my heat, but I couldn't go on to the semifinal because I literally had butt cramps for 30 minutes, and it was really painful. The problem was that on those indoor tracks, they're only 200-meter tracks, and so the turns are really tight. And I'm short enough that I was able to make them without slowing down, but the cramps immediately afterwards, was the price that I paid. Let's see. PFO Dynamite says, my sister-in-law keeps getting religious tattoos, and my wife says she uses it to witness to people. I think God thinks they are tacky. I don't think God cares much about tacky versus stylish versus fashion, to be honest with you. What do you think Old Testament says no tattoos? I am generally against tattoos. I think that they are ugly. And so I don't see how they serve the good, the beautiful, and the true. I mean, if you notice, it's a really effective metric for life to be able to ask yourself, does this serve the good, the beautiful, and the true or not? Now, I do actually approve of some tattoos. Like, for example, if you're a combat soldier and you get some sort of unit tattoo or a Marine tattoo, Um, the you know if you're a black belt or if you're in a tradition like Muay Thai, um, that's fine. But to get it for personal vanity, um, a lot of what I see is people trying to get attention. To me, most tattoos are just a form of attention seeking. Where were you says sprinters get cramps from running 300 meters. This is unimaginable to a distance runner. It's amazing how different bodies can be. Oh, it is funny. I mean, we used to rag on each other all the time. Um, the distance runners were most amused by what they call the sprinter's jog. It's the only jog in the world that's actually slower than walking. Um, of course, as we pointed out, if your coach is about to make you run your eighth, sub 28-second 200 in a row, you, you jog pretty damn slowly too. So, um, anyhow, it's I talk about scars. I mean, I still I still bear the psychological scars of speed day. So, um, if you tattoo MAGA on your lower back, is it a Trump stamp? I think that's I think that's good. But see, it's not about whether it's not about whether you regret it or not. It's a. I mean, the, there's almost nothing more tedious than listening to somebody try to explain to you how meaningful a marking on their skin is. You know, um, I mean, for me, I always find it slightly amusing because they'll say, well, I got this to remind me of my my little sister or something. And you know, I obviously don't make myself very popular with people when I point out the obvious. Um, if your little sister was so important to you, don't you think you would remember her without drawing on your skin? So, um, anyhow, hey Vox, my grandfather said we were border Scots. Ever heard the term? I found almost no information online. Well, yeah, I mean, they usually talk about when border Scots, he's probably talking about lowland Scots. There's a difference between the Highland Scots and the lowland Scots. The lowland Scots tended to be more civilized, uh, less rebellious. They tended to get along with the English and tolerate English rule a lot better. The Highlanders, not so much. Do the VFM have numbered tats? No, the VFM do not have number tats. They carve their numbers into their flesh with usually a sharpened SJW bone. So, um, let's see. Anyhow, again, I'm not condemning any of you who happen to have tattoos. I have plenty of friends with tattoos, um, but it's just not something that I'm a fan of. It's not something that I think uh, looks particularly good. Um, Again, I don't mind it so much when it's something like for example, if you're an Olympian and you get an Olympic rings tattoo, fine, great, more power to you. Um, but if it's not something, um, if there isn't something that uh, is that level of sort of achievement, Eh. Um, PFO Dynamite says 13 Reasons Why, the teenage suicide poison show, put a PSA before their third season about, hey, by the way, don't kill yourself. Should be illegal. I'm sorry, that's just funny. On the other hand, if you're going to kill yourself because of a television show, what are the odds that you're not going to sooner or later anyhow? Satoshi Bear throws in $5. Thanks. And PFO Dynamite throws in 2 as well. No. Vox should get a tattoo when he finishes the Throne of Bone series. Yeah, that's not going to happen. It is funny, though. The whole, if you think about the whole wizardry thing, that's actually potentially a form of negative rhetoric, or negative wizardry. If you think about it, it's like the whole Google "don't be evil" thing. You've got this television show, and they're saying, "Don't kill yourself. Don't kill yourself." Well, 99% of the people who are watching it are going, I wasn't thinking about that, but now I am. So I don't know. Most television these days is absolute culture rot. Of course it is. Look who's producing it. The very worst people on the planet are producing this stuff. Of course it's bad. So anyhow, I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to cover tonight. Other than I am hoping that we're going to be able to, or that Owen will be able to offer tickets to the You're Doing Great Kid tour starting next week. We're working with a couple different folks, and there are some promising systems that we're looking at, and so I will keep you posted. And on that note, I wish you a pleasant evening. This is, as they say, the Darkstream, and I'm Vox Day.